All right. Let's go. Apparently, I got helicopters flying up over the top of me, so that should be interesting. See if anybody pops in. I'll give it a minute, and then I'll jump into to the journey of descent. For those that are watching this later on, I wanted to put together a kind of a history of some of our coins, because I feel like there's a lot of history that we generally only see kind of bits and pieces of in the in the different denominations and the different series. So what I wanted to do is to try to put together um, I guess a little mini series of some of the coins that we have, starting with the small cent or the cent. I'm not going to talk a lot about the large cent. I'm just going to talk about these small cent. What's up, Luz? Glad you could come in, man. I have helicopters going on over the top of my house. I don't know what's going on, but I can hear them through my headphones, so it's kind of weird. Um, so yeah, so I'm gonna do a little mini series on the small cent. We'll see how far that I get into it today. I'm hoping to get through most of it. I currently have over 4 pages of notes, so I'm gonna go through this, and it's going to be a interesting ride. So just give it a couple more seconds, and then I'll take off. Ah, all right. So, so what I have for this mini series is a um, mini series for denominations. I started with the small cent. Basically, I'm gonna talk about the design history of the small cent. And as it starts with a small cent, it starts with the Flying Eagle. So the Flying Eagle was first produced in 1856 and is considered the birth of the small cents. The 1856 was a pattern type coin and was made to show Congress how the new cent would look like. On the obverse of the coin is an eagle with its wings spread, signifying freedom. The eagle was chosen by Mint Director James Snowden from the reverse of the Gobrecht silver dollar that was minted between 1836 and 1839. Above the eagle is United States of America, with the date proudly displaying at the 6 o'clock position beneath the eagle. The wreath on the reverse was borrowed from the reverse design of the gold dollar and $3 coin designed by James Longacre. The new small cent had a composition of 88% copper and 12% nickel, with a total weight of 4.67 grams. This composition was heavily influenced by lobbying from Joseph Wharton and his monopolized control of the nickel mines at the time. This new coin was not authorized by any act of Congress, therefore, from a legal standpoint, it is considered illegally produced. An initial production run of 1,000 was ordered by Snowden, with at least 634 given to politicians and other well-connected people. During 1858 and 1859, more coins were restruck using the original dies. There are three main varieties for the 1856 Flying Eagle. The original pieces struck for the mint and governmental purposes in 1856 and early 1857. The first restrikes of 1858 sold to collectors, and a third, the questionable second restrikes of 1860. The 1857 issue of the Flying Eagle was struck following the act of February 21st authorizing these small cents. The authorized small cents were very popular with the public and saved in large quantities. The mint went so far as setting up booths in the mint yard to sell coins to the public. Clash die specimens may be the result of night watchmen at the mint illegally experimenting with coin dies. There are some design varieties with the 1857 that have the diagnostics with the square O in of, which was the style of the 1856 for their lettering. Design varieties for the 1858 also include both large and small letter designs and a significant 8/7 variety that was discovered in recent years. This particular design is believed to be a refurbished 1857 die with the 8 numeral added later for production. In 1858, the mint tested new designs for a new cent. Between 60 and 100 sets of 12 pattern coins were struck consisting of the standard flying eagle obverse, a scrawny eagle pattern, and the Indian head design with 4 different wreaths for the reverse. The chosen elements would become the Indian head cent that was selected by Mint director James Snowden. The Indian head cent replaced the Flying Eagle cent in 1859. This first year of the Indian head actually showed the head of Liberty with an Indian chief's headdress in the middle of the obverse. United States of America around the outside, and the date still remaining at the 6 o'clock position. The reverse showed a prominent 1 cent in the middle surrounded by a laurel wreath with a bow tied at the bottom middle. Both obverse and reverse designs were done by James Longacre. In 1860, the laurel wreath was changed to an oak wreath and a small shield added at the top of the reverse. It is thought by some numismatists that the change from the Flying Eagle to the Indian head cent in such short time was stemming from challenges of getting clean and clear strikes, as the Flying Eagle often lacked design details due to the depth of the overall strike. The new Indian head design was overall a lower relief, thus would give a better strike with all of the relevant details retained in the strike. So basically what that's saying is that with the design of the Flying Eagle, there was a lot more depth to it. So the dies would, as they would wear out, you would start to lose detail. And the Indian head, because it was a lower relief, it had a better overall strike because there wasn't a lot of depth for that metal to go into. So it could retain better details when it was struck. Now, with that, you're going to have the more strikes that you get off of it, the less use that you're going to get out of the die, because it'll start to lose details faster, but you'll have cleaner strikes overall. Composition of the Indian head cent retained the same composition of the Flying Eagle at 88% copper and 15% nickel, or copper nickel. And this mix held until 1864, and during the Civil War, where a multitude of privately issued Civil War tokens were used in circulation, with an overall lack of official government issued coinage. In 1864, the weight of the Indian cent was reduced, and the metal composition reverted to a bronze, mostly copper alloy, largely due to the mint running out of nickel, and the demand for cents being at an all-time high. So during 1864, you have a lot of Civil War tokens during this time, and basically every single company that could produce coinage, store tokens, all that stuff, were making their own coinage for commerce, because the government basically couldn't produce until the government stepped in and wanted to maintain standardization with coinage and started minting coinage again. 1864, the weight of the Indian set was reduced, and the metal composition reverted to a bronze, mostly copper alloy, largely due to the mint running out of nickel, and then demand for cents being an all-time high. The letter L was added to the ribbon on the lower side of the headdress to reflect the changed composition. Post-Civil War years saw the production of the Indian head cents drastically reduced as the hoarding of coinage up to and during the Civil War ceased, and introduction of other base metal coinage, like the 3-cent silver and 3-cent nickels, helped to soften the demand. Post-war years saw an increase in popularity of the cent in large mintages. The 1864 Indian head was made up of 95% copper with 5% tin and zinc. This composition was kept through the change from the Indian head to Lincoln cent in 1909. The Lincoln cent was one of the first coins with a depiction of a leader of state instead of a representation of Lady Liberty. The preface for this change initiated with Congress passing legislation in 1890 that allowed the mint to alter designs that had been in use for 25 years without the need for legislative authorization. The second part came in 1904 when President Theodore Roosevelt wrote to Secretary of the Treasury Leslie Shaw complaining that current U.S. coinage lacked artistic merit, further inquiring if it was possible to hire a private artist for new coin designs. That part I thought was really kind of interesting because I haven't known like presidents to be interested in coinage in that kind of sense. Like I didn't really see Teddy Roosevelt saying that the coinage that they had at the time lacked artistic merit. Like thinking of some of the coins that that are around those days, that that's when they had a lot of art to them. So I took that as it's kind of different, or it's not kind of different. It's very different, and especially with the president of the United States basically saying that, hey, we want to go after something different, and we want to hire private artists instead of using the engravers and the designers that were currently employed at the mint. I thought was definitely a break in tradition and break in procedure. Following direction from Roosevelt, the mint hired Augustus St. Gaudens to redesign the cent and the 4 gold pieces: the double eagle, half eagle, and quarter eagle. St. Gaudens' original design for the cent was a flying eagle, but found out that he could not use an eagle after the 1873 Coinage Act, and instead used it for the $20 piece. Augustus, ill with cancer, was carried daily to his studio for 10 minutes a day to critique the work of his assistants on current projects, including the cent. He died on August 3rd, 1907. In 1908, with the redesign of the 4 gold denominations completed, Roosevelt focused on the cent, and with the centennial of the birth of the assassinated President Lincoln would occur in 1909, a largely number of privately manufactured souvenirs were already being issued. Citizens had already begun writing letters to the Treasury Department proposing a Lincoln coin, and Roosevelt was interested in honoring his fellow Republican. In late 1908, Roosevelt sat for sculptor Victor David Brenner, who was designing a medal for the Panama Canal Commission. Brenner was selected to design the new Lincoln cent in January of 1909, hired by Mint Director Frank A. Leach. And one side note for that is that there wasn't really a lot of information on why Brenner was chosen for that role. In my opinion, it was that he had already done some work that had depictions of Lincoln. So they kind of I'm guessing that they thought that he already had the background for what they might be looking for, um, and they chose him. Brenner was selected to design the new Lincoln Cent, hired by Frank A. Leach. Brenner's obverse design closely resembles a profile of Lincoln that he had used in other work. It is believed that Brenner, based on his work on an 1864 photograph of Lincoln taken at Matthew Brady's studio. On January 18, 1909, Brenner submitted models to the Mint with a Lincoln profile on the obverse and reverse design showing a tree branch very similar to the then current French silver coins. Leach did not confront the sculptor regarding these designs, but simply ruled out the submitted designs as unsuitable for the reverse of the cent. That part was also really interesting. On that, Brenner would basically copy or have the same kind of thought of having the reverse, like a branch to be on the reverse of the cent, because there wasn't anything else like that in the U.S. coinage at the time. So that was kind of a stretch out into left field in terms of designs. Leach urged Brenner to prepare a simple design bearing the denomination, the country's name, and the motto E Pluribus Unum. Brenner worked quickly, and on February 17th, so basically between January 18th and February 17th, so like within 30 days, he had come up with a new design, and he had created the models for this new design, and he delivered the models for both the obverse and reverse, similar to the eventual coin, although with a larger bust of Lincoln and the motto "In God We Trust" omitted. Brenner used 2 ears of Durham wheat for the reverse and had spelled United with a V. That is a kind of a throwback to some of the European coinage, especially there's another one that I was thinking of, I just can't remember right now, that actually has what was I thinking? Some of the like the Roman or the Latin spellings for some of the words where U's are replaced with V's. So I think it was kind of also an interesting take that he would use a V instead of a U to be able to use that for United. Roosevelt required it spelled the conventional way after the designs had been shown to him. After Leach examined the models, he objected to the fact that Brenner had put his full surname on the obverse. And one thing that I had pointed out in my notes is that when model makers, especially sculptors, are making models or busts, or things like that, like they often put their names or initials on those metals to signify that it is their work. So I thought it was kind of interesting on that point, that I feel like, especially coming from Brenner, like that would be a very common practice for a sculptor to basically sign his work. And the fact that Leach had basically objected to him doing that, because it was for supposed to be for a coin instead of making a metal. So I think that was probably some things that they could have worked out beforehand, especially with his background as a separate artist, as a private artist and private sculptor. On March 4th, 1909, Roosevelt left the office, replaced by William Howard Taft. Brenner met with mint engraver Charles Barber in Philadelphia. Even though Brenner complained that the reduction technique of the large plaster models to the coin-size hubs was losing too much detail. So to talk about some of how they made coin dies at the time. It's called a galvano. It is a very large plaster model, and basically there is a reduction lathe that takes basically a pinpoint around this plaster model, and then it engraves it into a die face, and that's the reduction process that makes it down to the dies. And that was a really common practice to have the reduction lathes do that, to take these galvanos, these plaster models, and then translate them into coin dies. And Brenner really had a problem with this, because he felt like that process of reduction actually got rid of too much detail. So he was kind of vocal about that. It's losing too much detail, and you're losing the art in the process of reduction. After several hubs were prepared by the Medallic Art Company of New York, Barber sank a master die and sent it to Brenner for retouching. So I felt like that part right there was Barber, Charles Barber, trying to kind of ease the sculptor, Brenner, to say, hey, like, here's where it is. This is how it comes out. If you want to retouch it, so that you can make sure that it has all the details, here's your chance. And patterns were prepared from the dies, but Barber and Leech were unhappy with the pieces. On March 22nd, Leech wrote to Brenner, I have to inform you that I was not satisfied with the first proof of the Lincoln set. I found that you had not dropped the Lincoln portrait down, so the head would come nearer to the center of the coin. Therefore, I had Mr. Barber make me a proof of this change, and as this left so much blank space over the top, we concluded that it would be better to put on the motto, In God We Trust. This change has made a marked improvement in the appearance of the coin. And I think this is really kind of interesting, because this is kind of a way to... like, I thought of Leech and Barber to say, like, hey, this is how we wanted it to begin with. This is what we asked you for, but you didn't do it. So now we did it for you, and it looks better. But that's just my opinion. On May 26th, samples of a new coin with and without the motto were shown to President Taft, who selected the mottoed version. It was formally approved by the Secretary of the Treasury, and the release date of August 2nd, 1909 was set. So I thought that was interesting, that it was actually President Taft who selected the final model that would be used for the Lincoln sense as we know it. And especially in that kind of sense, if I was David Brenner, I might feel a little bit slighted in that whole situation, that that they went kind of over my head and had changed this model to fit what they wanted it to be, and kind of disgraced the art that I put forth. But again, my opinion. On the Philadelphia Mint struck 20 million of the new coins even before its design was made official. There was intense public interest in the new cents, since the Mint had not permitted images of the new coin to be printed in the newspaper. And there was a lot of different rumors and everything about what the coins were going to look like, and there was a lot of interest about it, because it was new. On the morning of August 2nd, long lines formed outside Treasury facilities across the U.S., with some early applicants being able to obtain all the coins they wanted. This led to rationing of the new coins. For example, applicants at the New York Sub-Treasury were only allowed 100 pieces per person, and applicants at those who visited the Philadelphia Mint were only allowed 2 each. So that's really going to have a big sway in the distribution of the coins, as a whole, that really changed how the coins landed. By the afternoon of August 2nd, Brenner's initials on the reverse of the coin had become a source of controversy, with newspapers that basically were publishing opinions that the coins were illegal because of the initials VDB on the reverse of the coin, which they saw it as advertising. On August 5th, Secretary McVeigh ordered the coinage suspended until the coins could be struck with an inconspicuous B for Brenner on the coin. And this is where you have a lot of, there's a lot of publicity around this. There's a lot of controversy around this. There's a lot of drama around this. And this is where we see the change, or the possible change, from having the initials completely removed and a B placed on the coin, or the initials removed completely and the coin struck without the initials. Removing the current initials and striking new pieces with no initials would lead to a 3-day delay in coinage, while removing the initials and inserting a B would incur a 14-day delay. And Charles Barber resisted the usage of the initial B, as he had used an identical initial on his Barber coinage. So he feared that the new coin would be deemed as his work, and, quote, he is not willing to be held personally responsible for the Lincoln penny, which he has always opposed and does not regard as a successful coin. So there's a lot bit of drama right there between David Brenner, his initials on the back of the coin. Charles Barber's rolled into this. The fact that they had to stop production of the coins, so they could resolve this, and how much of a just an overall issue that 3 initials on the back of a coin cost, which was down from his full name. Brenner also objected to his initials being removed, obviously, but his protests were to no avail. The cents without the VDB on the reverse were in production by August 12th, 1909. So from August 2nd, after they had minted the 20 million, and August 12th, that is your time frame of your 1909 VDBs. So the fact that, finding those VDBs are harder to find, that's because that's your time frame, is that was the only time that they were in production and that they were minted, was only up until then. And then past August 12th, they only minted the coins without the initials on the reverse. So your no VDBs are technically going to be easier to find because they were in production for much longer. During the halt, owners of vending and slot machines complained that the new pennies were too thick to fit in their machines, which was a big deal at the time. We saw a situation just like that around the same time as the Sacagawea dollar came out, or the Susan B. Anthony dollar came out with vending machines. Like that's apparently been a thing since all the way back in 1909, because that's a whole industry by itself. So orders were made to change the dimensions, but actually in the end, the manufacturers of the machines actually modified their machines to suit the new set. So our brand new Lincoln cent had almost changed again for the 3rd time. And there was a couple of problems kind of in that same sense, because with changes that soon, you would need Congress authorization to change the dimensions or anything about the design with the coin. Um, but it was still new enough that if changes need to be made, they could technically make them at the time. Um, but in the end, the manufacturers of the machines just modified their machines. So in 1917, the wartime economy had caused a shortage of cents, and during this time, the Lincoln cent had not been dominant in circulation yet. And it is estimated that at the time, that 4/5 of the cents in circulation at the time were still the Indian head design, which demand for the new cent, or demand for the cent, continued to increase when a luxury tax was instituted, where cents were needed to make change. In 1918, Brenner's initials were restored to the coin, appearing where Lincoln's shoulder is cut off by the rim of the coin. So 1918 is where we see the initials VDB return to the coin, but on the obverse this time and down on the shoulder of the Lincoln bust, where they would remain for long as the coin's been in production. The recession year of 1922 brought a lower than usual demand for coins in circulation with a low amount of coins minted. At the time, dies were only made at Philadelphia, with the Denver Mint having outstanding orders for cents that year. When Denver reached out to Philly for more dies, it was told that the Philly Mint could not supply any more cent dies as it was fully tied to preparing dies for the peace dollar. Denver continued striking coins with a worn-out obverse die, leading to faint design details or missing details, such as the mint mark being completely absent. Beginning in 1936, Prue coins were struck for collectors for the first time since 1916. These specialty pieces were coined from dies that were specially treated and polished to a mere smoothness. There we go. So then the next big change for our small cents is going to be the wartime cents. So with the entry of U.S. into World War II, copper and tin were both needed for the war effort, and several corporations were conducting experiments under contract of the Mint where they tested various metallic and also non-metallic substances, which included fiber, tempered glass, and several types of plastic. And these experiments used various designs since the actual Lincoln cent dies could not leave governmental custody. As the experiments proceeded, production of bronze cents was cut back drastically in July of 1942 and ceased entirely in December. On December 18, 1942, Congress gave the Mint authorization to change the composition of the cent for a 3-year period. And 5 days later, it was announced that the coin would be made out of zinc-coated steel. Zinc and iron form a very electromagnetic couple where basically the coin would be made out of both metals. And the problem with that is that when the two metals came in contact in a damp environment, they would start to corrode pretty quickly. The public soon complained that the new coins were becoming spotted and stained. Another common complaint was confusion with the dime, because it was the same color. And some letters suggested that a hole to be punched in the center of the new coins so that you could tell the difference between the pennies and the dimes. The Mint had responded that new pieces would soon become darker, and the Mint would be willing to darken them if they could figure out a suitable process. Production of the wartime cent was provided for in an act of Congress approved on December 18, 1942, and with also that set the expiration date of December 31st, 1946. Low-grade carbon steel formed the base of these coins, to which a zinc coating that was 0.013 millimeters thick which is 0.0005 inches thick, was deposited on each side electrolytically. And this was done specifically to inhibit rust. This coating was applied to the steel before the blanks were made, leaving the rims of these coins as very susceptible to rust. The same size was maintained, but the weight was reduced from the standard 48 grains, or 3.1 grams, to 42 grains, 2.7 grams, by using a lighter alloy. Production commenced on February 27th, 1943, and by December 31st of that year, the three mint facilities had produced 1,093,838,670 of the 1 cent coins. The copper released for the war effort was enough to meet the combined needs of 2 cruisers, 2 destroyers, 1,243 flying fortresses, 120 field guns, and 120 howitzers. In December of 1943, the Treasury Department announced that the steel cent would be discontinued after 1943 and be replaced with coins containing 95% copper and 5% zinc. The Treasury also stated that some of the metal for the new coins would be obtained by melting down small arms ammunition cells. However, that point is kind of contested because there are some people that believe that didn't actually happen, although there are people that also have found coins that are minted with a different alloy, a different copper alloy, or brass alloy that they're believed to be the remnants of the brass casings that were melted down. After the war, the Treasury quietly retired as many steel cents as it could from circulation, while denying it was doing so. No public admission of the program was made until 1959, as the Treasury feared that if it were made known publicly, the coins would be hoarded, as often did a lot of coins, that the public knew that they were going to be in short supply. There are a few 1943 bronze cents and 1944 steel cents that are known to exist, and they are very rare, specifically because of the process in which these coins were created. So, going forward to 1959, that's when they changed the design. And the design actually was considered, the design change was actually considered in 1952 when the mint considered replacing the Lincoln cent. But mint officials feared that the incoming Eisenhower administration would be hostile to replacing a Republican on the cent. The mint was aware of the 1955 double dies, and they knew that they were somewhere within a large production lot, but opted to release them rather than to destroy the entire lot. And that's one of the big ones that a lot of people know for the Lincoln cents is the 55 double die. On Sunday morning, December 21st, 1958, President Eisenhower's press secretary, James Hagerty, issued a press release announcing that a new reverse design for the cent would begin production in January 2nd, 1959. The new design, designed by Frank Gasparo, had been developed by the Treasury in consultation with the Lincoln Sesquicentennial Commission, approved by the President and the Secretary of the Treasury, Robert Anderson. The new design featured the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. The redesign came as a complete surprise, as word of the proposal had not been leaked. So they were pretty good about keeping the design changes kind of under wraps until they were released at the time, which was kind of cool. The coin was officially released on February 12th, 1959, which was the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, although some of the pieces entered circulation early. The selected design was a result of an internal competition among the mint's engravers. Gasparro did not go in person to see the Lincoln Memorial, a place he had never visited. According to Anderson, Gasparro created an impressive image of the memorial. However, that Taxay states that the design looks at first glance like a trolley car. And other people think that the design was an artistic disaster, which I think it's a very clean design, where you have the Lincoln Memorial right in the center, and it's surrounded by the motto in the United States of America and 1 cent across the bottom. It's a very clean design, and I don't think that artistically it's wrong. There was considerable public excitement over the small date and large date of the 1960 and 1960 Denver cents, with the small dates being of the rare. The mint feared the interior of the zero, as punched into the die, would break away during the coining process, giving the zero a filled-in appearance. To reduce the chance of this happening, the mint enlarged the date. Sealed bags of 1960s, with the face value of $50, sold for as much as $12,000. Prices for the small date coins, of which approximately 2 million have been struck at Philadelphia, continued to increase until 1964. Approximately 500 million of the Denver small date were struck out of the total minches of 1.5 billion, and are not particularly rare. The composition of the coin was changed slightly again in 1962. Mint officials felt that the deletion of the tin content would have no adverse effect on the wearing qualities of the coin, whereas the manufacturing advantages to be gained with the alloy stabilized at 95% copper and 5% zinc would be of much benefit. Congressional authority for this modification was contained in an act of Congress approved on September 5th, 1962. In 1964, a rise in the price of silver led to silver coins being hoarded by the public. With change short, hoarding extended to the cent, which also became scarce in circulation. Mint director Eva Adams felt part of the reason for the shortage was coin collectors taking pieces from circulation, and Adams ordered that mint marks no longer appear on the coins. Coins continued to be dated 1964 until end of 1965, using authority given by the Coinage Act of 1965, and almost all 1965 cents were actually struck in 1966. So that little point about Eva Adams basically claiming that coin collectors were the cause for shortage in circulation. I think, as all coin collectors probably feel, as almost a personal attack against coin collectors, because you couldn't have there are not that many coin collectors to single-handedly dominate circulation. I think there are a lot of people, a lot more people that were not collecting coins, and it's just kind of a culmination of a couple of different things. But yeah, I know that during that time there was a lot of things, a lot of coin collectors definitely felt slighted, and really reached out to the mint and to the mint director, and this is where we get those the SMS sets for the collectors, because the collectors really felt slighted in this whole situation. The mint began striking clad dimes and quarters, replacing the silver pieces which the public would not spend. Although coinage had been stopped at San Francisco after 1955, the California facility began to issue cents again, though without mint marks. In 1968, the mint marks were restored to the cent. San Francisco began minting a limited number of circulation strikes, which it would cease to do so after 1974. and then would begin striking proof coins. By this time, the master hub had become quite worn, and Lincoln's features were becoming indistinct. For the 1969 coins, a new master was produced for use in all three mints, and the features were sharpened and moved further from the edge of the coin, where the lettering was broadened. So there was another potential change in 1973 and 1974, where the copper prices began to rise, and that's when the mint tried to look for other options for metal content for coins, and that's where you get the 1974 aluminum cent, and these were very specifically just test pieces, and the mint had decided to switch to an aluminum cent, with over 1.5 million such pieces were struck at the second half of 1973, even though they were dated 1974. At congressional hearings, representatives of the vending machine industry testified that aluminum cents would jam their equipment, and the mint backed away from its proposal. And I think that's a very important piece to listen to, because with that is now the second time that coinage was potentially changed to accommodate for vending machine industry. So that really lays down kind of the groundwork for how important the vending machine industry was for the economy of the U.S. because of how many times that this comes up. Mint Director Mary Brooks sought the return of samples which had been distributed to members of Congress, but 14 remained missing, with the recipients affecting not to know what had become of them. Experiments also conducted with bronze-clad steel cents slated for disposal. When a bag of them tore open before going into a smelter, a few were kept by the workers, and these were also considered to be illegally held government property. In 1981, faced another rise of the copper price. The mint decided to change the composition of the cent to copper-covered zinc. After contract difficulties and production delays, the first such cents were struck at the Philadelphia Mint on January 7th, 1982. Denver did not convert to the new composition until October 21st. So this is where we see the change from the copper zincs to the zinkins, as we affectionately call them, in 1983. A number of small changes were made to the obverse design in the 1990s and early 2000s. And that is actually where I'm going to stop for tonight. So that took us all the way from the early, basically the first small cent, all the way from the first coin after the large cent was discontinued, with the Flying Eagle, went all the way through the Indian Head cents, and then through the history of basically the Lincoln cent, going up to basically 2008 is where we're at. So as you can tell from this information I've put out there have been a lot of changes in the coins, both with authorization and without authorization of Congress, and there's a lot of different opportunities that have come up, metal compositions that have changed the coins, and especially how industry affects the coinage for the U.S., especially with the vending machine industry coming into play now a second time, with the first one being in 1909. I want to say 1909. With the change of the Lincoln cent. That it really shows how coinage is really tied to commerce, and how if commerce changes, the coins almost have to change with it, or the coins change to ensure commerce still happens. Going back and forth between the vending machine industry, the Civil War tokens, all of those things. So that's where I'm gonna call this part of our journey of the small cent. So we'll come back next week for part 2. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around and listening to this. This is just the first part of the series that I wanted to put together because I think there's a lot of important history in our coinage, and especially with the designs and the compositions and where they come from. So thanks for taking a listen to me ramble for the last 50 minutes. And if you guys like this content, please hit the like button down below. If you aren't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button right down over there. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.